From the center of the galaxy, this is ForceCenter, a show about Star Wars, pop culture, and the ultimate adventure, life itself. I'm Ken Napzok.
I'm Joseph Scrimshaw.
And I'm Jennifer Landa.
And we are here to take a microscope and a magnifying glass and turn our Sherlock Holmes and really investigate the New Republic. That's right. The New Republic in this new era of Star Wars storytelling is going to be in our focus here today. We're going to have a lot of fun, perhaps grilling them, perhaps looking for strands of hope within the darkness. It's going to be fun. Before we get to all that, though, I want to remind you that today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get an audiobook, a free audiobook, a free one. It's in my head. And a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. Over 180,000 titles and growing to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player, or any device I'm sure that you have now that I don't even know exists. A little bit later, we'll have our ForceCenter recommends an audiobook we think you should try out on us and support the show in the process. We're off and running, Joseph.
I'm very excited to turn our Sherlock Holmes around. I know exactly what you mean. You're talking about his dear stalker cap, I believe. But I think it's better without the details. I think let's turn our Sherlock Holmes around.
Turn him around. Turn him around.
Soon all the kids are going to be saying it on social media. It's a great turn of phrase. I'm very excited for this topic.
You don't need all the words. You don't need all the words.
Nah. Podcast's going to be much shorter now. We don't need all the words.
Or punctuation.
Yeah, and I'm choking on my breakfast. What a lot! And you know what? This is why I love we have video now. Now you can see that I'm literally muting my mic and drinking water because I had an English muffin for breakfast, and it's still in my throat. What a day! What a day! We're here a little bit later. We're going to have our Force Center Ask. Stay tuned for that. Where's my end crew show friends there? We are going to have a special kind of new goal and announcement at the Ask segment a little bit later in the show. But Joseph, life and Star Wars adventures are here now. Where did Star Wars find you?
Yeah, Star Wars found me lots of places, which is really great. I'm going to get started on a blog, hopefully a weekly blog. That's the goal, a newsletter. That should be available if you're listening to this when it comes out on Tuesday. The first issue is coming out on Tuesday. So that was kind of a life adventure where Star Wars always helps. Every year I've been writing down not resolutions, but goals of like, here's a specific concrete thing. I did it or I didn't, and then I can check the box. But every year, and I started doing this in going into 2020, which was hard because I didn't do a lot of those things.
That year.
But Rise of Skywalker had just come out. And I so love Luke's line about confronting fear is the destiny of a Jedi. So I have all these like, yes or no, I did them or I didn't. And then almost as a joke, I wrote, right, confronting fear is the destiny of a Jedi. Because I feel like almost everything that I have a hard time doing, either it's something in the world that I can't control, or if it's something that I'm having a hard time with, it's probably fear. So I always feel like every time I get a little thing done, it's a bit of a Star Wars adventure. So there was the blog thing. And then a quick fun, just like Star Wars finds you. My wife and I have been watching some classic Doctor Who. There's an episode that I haven't seen since the 80s. It's a third Doctor John Pertwee episode called The Mutants. And right away there's an actor like, that actor looks really familiar, but so young, so naked-faced. It's Garrick Hogan. It's Biggs Darklighter. And like, this is great, watching Biggs. And then it's like, who is this bald man who's just a phenomenal actor, and I feel like somehow I know them. Did I meet them in real life? Oh, it's Lobot. That's John Hollis. So I'm watching this Doctor Who that stars Biggs and Lobot, and then later in the day, I ended up at this comic book store I've never been to that happened to have a bunch of Star Wars action figures. Same day that I saw Biggs and Lobot, and there are Biggs and Lobot action figures, and I just thought like, isn't that like a great, not just how Star Wars finds you, but how we in our lives never know where we're going to end up? Like those two British actors working for a paycheck, not stardom, just kind of doing their job. And I got a couple episodes on Doctor Who over 40, almost 50 years later. They're like, yeah, and they're little plastic versions of me that people can find in, a shopping mall in Topanga Canyon. Like, they would have never thought that when they were recording that episode of Doctor Who.
Absolutely insane. Yeah, John Hollis. You don't, the late great John Hollis. You don't see him in a lot of other things. You don't hear about him, right? You hear the other people sometimes because Star Wars is vast. And hey, William Hookins is in Batman. Blah blah blah. John Hollis. That's a good pull. That's a rare card.
Yeah, actually, you hear him. The Lobot speaks. It's great. It's
Wow.
great. Yeah, because a lot of his other roles are small roles or cameos. He's Blofeld, uncredited Blofeld, and For Your Eyes Only. All sorts of great stuff. Anyway, that's my Biggs and Lobot adventures this week.
Oh, that's right. That's great. Jen, any luck finding rare action figures out in the
No.
world?
No. I did get a gift from my father-in-law. They gave me this self-heating mug. It's called an Ember mug, right? And I was like, I don't know, what's this going to be about? It's amazing. So this is a plug for Ember. It keeps your coffee warm. So you might see me drinking out of this. My husband's like, because he got one too. He's like, we need something to distinguish. Get a sticker on it. And I was like, oh, I got stickers. And he's like, is it waterproof? I said, absolutely. So I pulled this, my Boba Fett. There's the camera. There we go.
Yeah.
It looks freaking awesome. And my husband was like, oh, wait, that looks really cool. Well, I want one. And I didn't really have that many left because Jabba didn't fit on the cup quite right. So
Get your own stickers.
Yeah. So it was either Han and Carbonite or Scout Trooper, and he chose a Scout Trooper. But mine's way cooler.
I mean, I'm literally shopping Ember mugs right now because I have someone in my house who needs something to keep her coffee warm all day.
I
and
was
all the night.
shocked. It's really effective. I was like, oh, what am I got? I don't know if I'm going to do this. I like my Star Wars mugs, but I'm really impressed with this mug. It keeps my coffee quite warm.
Okay.
And readers of High Republic will be thrilled because there's a popular charhound, a lovely doggy who breathes flames called Ember that people love. It's like a pet of some Jedi who are like, it's probably an attachment to have a charhound, but we love Ember. So that's an extra incentive for Star Wars fans.
Or if you're a fan of Elemental, the main character is Ember.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
All right. I can play too. There's a steakhouse in my hometown called Ember, owned by a former high school friend of mine. A high school graduate of mine.
It's like we're on a road trip in the back of a station like in the 70s, just desperate to entertain ourselves. What's a word that means many things?
Ember.
I buy Ember. Oh my gosh.
We used to play road bingo. We'd have those little things, and you just play road bingo. Amazing. Good stuff.
I just want to say one last thing. I'm here as a representative of all the girls and women who love Star Wars because, we do exist. Throw that out there.
Yeah, that's been it's been quite a week for that conversation. Maybe we'll take the gloves off and dive in. No, it's been I have some thoughts of those folks, but I have a theory that they have never really loved Star Wars or women. But anyways, that's a different conversation.
Want to be starting something. Want to be starting something.
Ken, how was your week, and how much sudden Michael Jackson was there in it?
A little bit, because I'm a DJ for that oldie station in Pennsylvania, and Michael did pop up this week. And I'll be honest, sometimes I remove him, but I played one of his older tunes this week, so he did pop up. Yeah, that's funny. For me, less exciting in terms of Star Wars, but trying to apply Star Wars lessons, as we often do, and attach them to real life. I've been documenting here in ForceCenter my return to loving football at a level I haven't loved in years. I'm a Miami Dolphin fan. It was a bad weekend for us, and it's been 2 or 3 out of the last 4 weekends have been bad for Dolphins. And I've had to, try to curb my passion and anger and wanting to slide into the dark side like I used to do years ago as a sports fan, and I'm trying to just enjoy sports and leave it at the door. And it was always easy for me. I wasn't one of those demonstrative people. Once I got past like high school, then I realized that was stupid. But it was a frustrating, you build up your hopes, Joseph, Jennifer, you build up your hopes. You sit down, you go get some food. You're like, it's 5 o'clock kickoff, 5:20 kickoff. Got some food. You're sitting down. You got your chihuahuas next to you. You're all excited. And then hope starts to fade. You feel like Poe Dameron in the Battle of Exegol. You've lost all hope. Except for you're waiting for Lando to show up. And so they lost, and they're in the playoffs. They got a game next week in the snow that I don't think is going to go well. So you just have to accept the reality, right? Just face the fears, confront your fears, Joseph, of having a team that's failing you. And when hope is dashed, and how can you find new strands of hope and move forward? I'm trying to apply Jedi life to being a sports fan.
I think that's great. And I think I love the serial adventure cliffhanger that you set us up on for next week of not only how does it go for your dolphins in the snow, which, biologically challenging.
Doesn't go well.
But I'm so fascinated to hear what your experience is going to be, since you have pre-accepted the loss.
Yes. And it's like, is that what I believe Qui-Gon jumped up from his knees in Phantom Menace to quote unquote win the fight for Anakin and that destiny. I don't think he accepted his loss there, but there's also a part of the energy of just like, whatever happens, but this probably isn't going to go well. That might be, I don't know. I'm not saying that was what Qui-Gon was saying, but I'm trying to insert that into Qui-Gon to make me feel better. But we'll see. There's always hope.
That'd be amazing if you could do like in The Simpsons they go into Homer's thoughts. If you could go into Qui-Gon's thoughts and he's like picturing like which grav ball team is going to win.
Which grav ball? I'll say this. My final thought: the Dolphins have a lot of injuries, and so they got some players returning this week in the playoffs. So maybe that is Lando showing up saying, "There's more of us, Poe. There's more of us, Poe." We'll see. It's most likely not. But anyways, Star Wars, I believe it's the same muscle. You don't have to like sports and the nerd stuff. You don't have to like just one or the other. You can like them all, but it's the same muscle. I'm rooting for superheroes and uniforms that I'll never be. So it's all there.
Love it.
So that's it. But from that, we are going to dive right into our main topic here. Joseph, you have this note. I'm going to say it and then pitch it to you here, but I love it. It's rooting for the New Republic. And I think the lessons I've tried to learn in football this week. Sometimes it feels a little dark and there's not a lot of hope, but I still want to root for them. And that's where I'm at as we go into this.
Yep. I got some questions here that are going to be coming up about how much you both root for the New Republic. I think I have a sense of where Ken is at, but I also just wanted to own our bias, or at least own my bias in writing these questions, is that I love seeing the New Republic, and even though that they are going to eventually crumble and literally burn in The Force Awakens, that I still enjoy rooting for them and wanting them to have victories. So with that in mind, just to give the overview of what we're really talking about here today, I want to acknowledge that there were decades of New Republic storytelling in EU Legends books and comics. So I think for a lot of people, fans of the EU Legends who lived through those books one after the other, the modern canon version of the New Republic are like, oh, okay, here's a different take on the story, but we've been there. But for those of us who didn't dive deep into EU Legends, this is this exciting time of finally seeing the New Republic in modern canon. We have had some books and comics about the early days of the New Republic in places like the Aftermath trilogy and Alphabet Squadron trilogy. We also got some tales of the waning days of the New Republic in books like Bloodline by Claudia Gray. It's a big one. But now in more recent years, the New Republic is finally actually coming to our screens in this modern canon. We, of course, get to see its brief and fiery end in The Force Awakens. There's some bits of New Republic life, although it's, I think, a little bit more focused on the Resistance in the animated show, The Resistance. Then in Mandalorian, we really start this New Republic era. We get snippets of prison ships and fighter pilots and debates and offices on Coruscant, all in The Mandalorian. And finally, in Ahsoka, we get to see some of the divided perspectives within the New Republic between leaders like Chancellor Mothma and Senator Xiono. Boo! I feel like Senator Xiono is like designed as a vaudeville character.
Yeah.
Yes.
They walk on stage, everybody go, boo! But maybe there's some people out there like, no, he's right. I love him. I have a tattoo of Senator Xiono. Who knows? We'll find out. So we'll get into some of the specifics from The Mandalorian and Ahsoka, but I wanted to start with just the big picture from our perspective, our totally biased perspective. The three of us all grew up with the original trilogy, didn't dive that deep into EU Legends. So the New Republic, result of the victory that we've lived with for years in Return of the Jedi, now we're finally seeing the reality of that victory in live action. Jennifer, what is interesting or exciting about that to you after all of these years from your perspective, now seeing the New Republic live action modern canon?
I love it. I think that they're doing a really great job making it feel timely. And I think it's just like history will repeat itself, and humans will be humans, especially when it comes to power, especially when it comes to ego. And we're seeing kind of these failures starting to repeat themselves, specifically in both The Mandalorian and Ahsoka. And I really like it. There's something enjoyable about watching it, especially because we know how it ends, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is it a thrill for you to, is it something that you thought about a lot, like after Return of the Jedi ended, of what's that government going to be like? What's it going to be like for Leia to be a leader, not a rebel? Were those the kind of things that you fantasized about? Fantasize might not be the right word, but you know what I mean.
No, but yes, absolutely. Because as a kid, you're like, oh, the war was won. Everything's great. Leia's going to train to become a Jedi and there's no more problems. They figured it out. And as we all know, when we become young adults, it's like, oh, that is not reality. And so seeing that reflected on screen, I think is incredibly important. And it's what I wanted to see. And especially with Bloodline, I remember reading Bloodline and just really the waning days as you're talking about. And that was really fascinating. And kind of getting into Leia's insight and the struggles that she was having. It's fascinating.
Yeah. And it is fascinating from the perspective of what kind of Star Wars storytelling that you like, because I certainly have talked to fans who liked the original trilogy's lighter touch on politics. It's running in the background. In the end of Return of the Jedi can be interpreted as a fairy tale. And they all lived happily ever after. Right. But Lucas's interest, clearly from his notes, from the prologue of the first novelization, from the prequel trilogy, is like, nah, I like the messier reality. There are fantasy elements, but I like the messier reality. And it's really fun and interesting to get into the messier reality after the party on Endor.
Yes.
Ken, how do you feel about it after all these years of waiting from your perspective?
After the Party, the Rebels After Endor story, coming on Netflix, 7-part series. Love this. I'm with you, Jen, and I want to acknowledge of the EU legend stuff that I did read back in the day, Heir to the Empire, and all the things about truces and courtships and new Jedi orders. I think the New Republic was messy enough, right? It wasn't like it was without problems, and I'm remembering some of the names and the senators and everything. So I think that was interesting then, but this has just been an absolute, like you said, Jen, a realistic double down on what would actually go on. I was trying to look it up, and I apologize because sometimes YouTube is weird. There was a comment on our video and show from last week about the new villains in the Rey Jedi Order movie. That was a great comment. Someone with a Russian background talking about new governments in Russia and how it doesn't necessarily get better. And it's good to change, but you end up with what you got now with Putin. And I was going to try to bring that in. I wasn't going to read all of it, but it's kind of fascinating to me with what's going on right now in the story of the New Republic. I was someone who I'll say agree with the choice in Force Awakens to for, dare I say, marketing purposes, say everything in this movie is practical. Definitely no computers used in the making of this film. Don't worry. And it's a little lighter on the detail, granular look at the politics, because that was one of the lingering things of the prequels. Whether you agree with that or not, that's what they did in 2015, and I think it was correct from a certain point of view. But I love the stuff in the novelization. I don't love the Force Awakens novelization, but you get more detail on Corcella and Leia being a warmonger and all that. And Corcella's got to make the pitch there on Hosnian Prime. And I love all that. And so to expand it and to have it get messy, to have it be about repeating cycles, to have it be about people like Senator Xiono who maybe were on the fence and wanted to see, all that stuff's pretty fascinating to me. And we're getting a chance. We know the ending. We're going to discuss that, but we get a chance to build back to how did that happen? How did Leia have to grab some drab uniforms and throw them on volunteers to do this fight one more time? And it's been exciting and intriguing to get to that.
Yeah, well said. I read Heir to the Empire, that whole trilogy, and I enjoyed the New Republic in the little bits and pieces that I've read and that I know. It's like, yeah, the New Republic was a government trying to figure things out. Yeah. But this is thrilling to me because it's on screen and it's this interesting storytelling where we know how it's going to end. So now we get to really examine what are the heroes trying to do right, what gets in their way, all that kind of stuff. But also just on the personal level, for growing up with Return of the Jedi and sort of all of the iconography of Return of the Jedi that is the New Republic, the Mon Cala ships. And I'm still watching those first scenes in Ahsoka going, it's cool to see everybody wearing General Madine's outfit. because
Yeah.
the standard New Republic outfit to me, after years of playing with the General Medine action figure with his pointer, is like that. They're all dressed like General Medine, not like other characters weren't dressed that way, but just seeing that that aesthetic, that iconography, that idea that we left them off in Return of the Jedi, hopeful to start a new government, or rather restore the old government. And there's something about watching it all in live action that almost feels like catching up with someone that you haven't seen in like 30 years on Facebook. Like, it's been long enough that's like, how did your life turn out? I last saw you at the Ewok party. How did your life turn out? And now we're getting this very complicated answer of how the life of the New Republic turned out. You were both saying, I think, some great things about what's interesting about it on a thematic level, besides the personal and the aesthetic and all that. I feel like the Mandoverse, all the shows so far, Mando, Boba Fett, Ahsoka, have been so clear on this theme of everybody, for good or bad, got used to the way things kind of ran during the Empire. People who benefited from it, people who were apathetic to it, even people who are used to fighting. That the heroes are all trying to move to the future and trying to kinder, gentler compromise, empathy. And there are all of these forces that are like, what if we just go back to the way it was, a little bit more harsh, a little bit more violent? And I think that overriding theme, that overriding question is what I'm really interested in the New Republic, of how do our heroes try to push a new perspective versus what pulls them back. And it makes this very interesting question of the goal of the rebellion was to restore the Republic. In this question going forward after the sequel trilogy of, was that a part of the mistake? Was it like, we need to reimagine entirely what we're doing? Was it a mistake to restore the old Republic, or should it have changed more?
That's a great thread to maybe pull on a little bit more in the new films. We'll talk about that when it comes, but that's a fascinating look at that.
Yeah.
Restore
the old Republic. So let's get into the whole rootin' thing. I want to see how much you two share my bias. So we know the New Republic is ultimately going to fail. It will provide peace and stability in the big picture for many years. But eventually it is going to refuse to face the threat of the First Order. That's pretty well laid out in some of the novelizations. And then get suddenly, burned to ash. So knowing that the New Republic is ultimately going to fail, Ken, do you still find yourself rooting for the New Republic, wanting to see victories? And if so, why do you think you feel that way about the New Republic?
I am absolutely rooting for the New Republic. That's probably why I'm here today. I would tag out if this wasn't an episode about rooting for them. I want them to have these victories, the big ones, not necessarily battles, but political victories. Rebuilding the systems, but like you just said, or are they restoring? And therefore, I find myself also disappointed with them. Right? There's a lot of bits and pieces and scenes and plot lines in these shows we're about to talk about where you're kind of like, no, what are you doing? Aren't you learning the lessons? And that just to me shows that that disappointment shows that you're still absolutely here for them to figure it out and do it the best way possible going forward. So yeah, I'm rooting. I've got my little New Republic sports uniform shirt on.
Yeah. And now, so that makes a ton of sense. There's also this long history in Star Wars of knowing how it's going to turn out. And sometimes different fans go, why should I care about this? I know how it's going to turn out. I think at different times people had that attitude toward the prequels, or, hey, all of the Clone Wars animated series. Ken, having gone through that, do you apply some of those lessons of, like, just because I know how this ends doesn't mean there isn't a lot of questions and intrigue and possibility along the way?
I think there's great value in going back. This is why we love history, or you should want to learn more about history, because there's different ways to analyze how we get there, the good, the bad, and the ugly of it all. And I think it's a chance for Star Wars to do that. Yeah, we do know the end, and the end is quick, and it's dark, and we get 10 seconds with him in The Force Awakens, give or take a few minutes. So I understand that, but it's same with Solo or a younger Lando. I'd still love a young Leia series when she's 13 or something. Like, I want to analyze who they are and how they got there. What is this system and what were the faults and how did they get there? I think there's great value in it. And I think you learn new things. And this is stories we're making up, but that's the thing going back to history. Yeah, We know who won those wars, but what got us there and how it almost couldn't, what mistakes could have been made, what mistakes were made by the opposition. That's fascinating stuff. It's valuable to go back to me.
Yeah, no, I love what you're saying about the morality tale of it, of what can we learn. But I think also it's just always good to remember too that creators have elbow room to tell a lot more story. Just because you know the end, that is not the entire story. The story of our lives isn't the last 5 days of our lives. The story of our lives is everything we accomplish, or experience. And I think just going back to the Clone Wars and like even that conversation that Filoni's been joking about a lot lately, where Lucas says Anakin has a Padawan, and Filoni, as a Star Wars fan, goes, "No, he doesn't." And George says, "Yes, he does." Like, you think you know this story, but we're going to tell more. Did you know Obi-Wan almost left the Jedi Order? Do you know all this about the Mandalorians? Like everything that I think a lot of fans cherish about the Clone Wars, that level of just storytelling and new ideas and new characters and nuance is possible in the New Republic as well. To me,
yeah, and I love it. And for Jen comes in, you mentioned the Obi-Wan one. Yeah, that revelation that he would have left for Satine. That was fantastic. It was important because then you realize, but he didn't. And now the weight of that story plot later on of him not leaving the Order and him being the hermit in the desert, and even what we know now about it. Yeah, that's the point, right? To learn it, and it helps highlight the final path, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jennifer, where are you at? Are you rooting for the New Republic?
Of course, I will always root for the democracy over a dictatorship. Right?
Fair.
I'm gonna fight for the people
like
who are fighting for the people, Leia, Mon Mothma. But I think that's why I always think about George Lucas and the many interviews that he's given where he talks about what 1 through 6 were for him, which was to show how does a democracy become a dictatorship? How do bad people, why do they oftentimes think that they're actually doing good? You know what I mean? Like, why are they believing in that in themselves? So, and certainly, as we know, 1 through 6 was very much about Vietnam, the Gulf War. George was not holding back from his critique and commentary on real world politics. So I like that the New Republic is kind of keeping that tradition. It's not so heavy-handed, I feel. It's doing it in a very smart way, a very deft way. So much so that some people are kind of missing the point. But I do like these stories. I think that they're important to tell, and I think it's why George felt it was important to tell, because what lessons can kids learn, adults learn by these morality tales, right? But like you're also saying, there's plenty of other stories that they can tell within that framework. So yeah, I'm always going to root for the New Republic, always.
Oh, I'm happy to hear it. I think.
Can you imagine if I was in order?
Well, I like that you. I want to be clear. I wasn't asking like, are you rooting for the First Order? Do you think they're right? Are you pro-democracy, Jennifer, or do you think we should just burn it? Burn. I'm big on this, just like my justice for the Jedi. I'm big on justice for the New Republic, which isn't that they are faultless. I think that it is a picture of incredibly well-intentioned, brave, intelligent, empathetic people trying to do something incredibly difficult. And to me, that's the storytelling. That's the lesson, is that even when people have absolutely the right idea, the right intentions, it is difficult to navigate being a truly great force in the world, be fair to everyone, while also being firm and moving forward and doing what is right without just trampling what other people need or want, is an incredibly difficult process. And I think what we're finally seeing, we'll get into more of what's in Ahsoka in the next question. But I think for me, the New Republic is a story of, we are trying to be this big tent that is there for everyone. Within that, we make compromises, and some of the compromises start to undermine our integrity. I love in Mandalorian that you can see the convert episode of the idea of an amnesty program is great. Somebody won that. Let's let people feel valuable and feel a part of things. The way the amnesty program is run is really dehumanizing, giving them numbers. In that, to me, I see like that's real world storytelling of sometimes you don't have a political win where you just get to do what a lot of people would agree is the right thing. It gets watered down. And I think if we can tell that story in a personal way, in a fun space fantasy way, it might help people look at difficult politics in the real world where, you know, when is the time that you are agreeing with an issue in what somebody is trying to get done, and then really seeing how hard it is to get it done. I feel like that's the storytelling that's going on. Lucas, you know, has talked about in various interviews about authoritarians can rise when the government isn't working well. And I think the picture that was in the prequels is repeating a little bit in the New Republic of stagnation. The failures that we've been seeing in the New Republic, sometimes it's Xiono, which we can talk about, but a lot of it is just bureaucracy of well-intentioned systems have been put in place. I rewatched this morning the scene from The Mandalorian with Carson Teva asking Tuttle, Tim Meadows, to go help Navarro. In the picture is like Tuttle isn't a, you know, mustache twirling villain. He's just like, I'm in my little box. This is my little bureaucracy. I'm in requisitions. What do you require? I have a priority sheet. They're not a member world. I'm in my little box. I did my correct thing. That's like the slow incrustation of bureaucracy. So I think that's a part of the story that's being told. Not they're inherently bad, but like what systems within a well-intentioned system are dragging them down.
I really love that you're highlighting that because I think that's one of the things I'm enjoying, and it's one of the things that I think it begs further analysis and conversation of even, we'll talk more about Xiono, like there could be a part of what he says where you're like, you know, he's not necessarily wrong if Hera's off on some just, you know, crazed adventure that's going to destroy property and people for the Republic. Maybe we should look at that. We have the benefit of knowing she's telling the truth, and also he's played as not quite mustache twirling, right? But he's a problem. But my point to the Tuttle scene was something I was going to reference later in the show too, of just yeah, that's the slip, that's the fall, and it's subtle and it's you know, incremental, and you can't really track it easily versus a black cape, red saber holding villain, right? And this is what's interesting, where you're able to, if all things are equal and both sides are coming to the table with a true spirit of compromise for the better of everyone around. That's how the system should work. It doesn't always happen, obviously, but that's kind of what is at play here, and that's why I think it's intriguing to me.
Yeah, and to be fair, you know, Kane is in that scene as an agent of, you know, Gideon actively manipulating it. So we've kind of got two storytelling threads, I think, of the New Republic's failure. One is just the bureaucracy and the compromise in the political work, and then there is the, you know, insidious, you know, what is the First Order, Gideon, Imperial Remnant, all manipulating. So to get into Ahsoka, the show, we get to clearly see that Mothma and Leia are concerned about Thrawn's return. We get to see them use their political acumen to maneuver around within the legitimacy of the system up to a point to advocate facing the threat of Thrawn. And then we see senators like Xiono and some others that I didn't write down all their names, that their concerns, they think the concerns about Imperial remnants are foolish, warmongering, paranoia. I want to talk about the Mothma and the Leia of it. I'll put my cards on the table first, that it was one of the scenes I was most excited about in Ahsoka. It was one of the scenes where it's like, damn, I wish we were covering Ahsoka right now on ForceCenter, because it was a scene that I'd been waiting for years. We've been seeing lots of people in The Mandalorian, in the Book of Boba Fett, have understandable doubts about the New Republic, or, you know, manipulative sort of attacks on the New Republic, like the client saying they don't really do anything. We've seen some of their failings in episodes like The Convert. And I have kept thinking, and Ken and I talked about a lot of, where's Mothma and Leia? And I think finally we're getting to see this broader picture of the New Republic, where there are multiple forces within it trying to come to a compromise. And it was so important for me to see my heroes, Mothma and Leia, trying hard to do the right thing from my perspective. So, Ken, how did you feel about that scene? And just knowing that Mothma and Leia are there fighting the good fight, trying to do what I think we, the audience, are supposed to think is the right thing. What's important to you about seeing that and seeing the full friction in the New Republic leadership?
I think the important thing is, they're on the right side, right? That's how I felt. Because there was a lot of those questions that you and I had off air, even during Mandalorian season 3, of like, Leia couldn't be happy with this if she found this out. Like, she would want to do something about it, and to see them do it, but do it in the system, respect the system. respect the system they're trying to build or rebuild, depending on how you look at it. I really liked kind of that hushed tone concern for Mothma. Not that she's trying to hide anything from Xiono, but just like, he look on paper he might have some points, but I'm asking you the truth here. I'm looking in your eyes. We both know what this could mean. We both went through it. He sat up in his tower here, didn't choose a side. He's like Walder Frey in Game of Thrones, late Walder Frey. You show up on the side of the victory. But you and I know, and how can I help within this system? And I know Leia. I know she's up. I thought it was a little bit of justice for them. Not that there was anything that we should have been worried about. We know these characters. We trust them. We love them. But to actually see it, that's what was exciting. And I don't want to say not to take the blame off of them, but just to be like, all right, that makes sense. It made sense that this is what's going on.
Yeah. Jennifer, how did you feel about Mothma and Leia's role in the New Republic, seeing them in this context in Ahsoka to maybe balance some of the negativity of the New Republic we've seen in other shows?
Yeah, like Ken, I felt a sense of relief to know that somebody's fighting the good fight, I mean, but then you also see what they're up against. And like you guys were saying, that's why I thought Senator Xiono, played by Nelson Lee, really well done, because he makes some interesting points. And he felt very much like a senator from our real world who's just trying to be pragmatic, right? And he's just trying to, like, you with your ragtag rebellion, it's time to get serious. Okay, everyone, like, this is not playtime. This is not adventure mode. Like, this is real life. And I don't know about your space whales. And so it almost felt like a parent, like he's the parent and Hera's the child. And it's like, no, you don't understand. There's like a big monster that's coming. He's like, all right, I don't have time for this. I got to make dinner. Like, how can I help you? Like, that just, I liked it because, like you guys are saying, he's not some man in a mask with a cape, right? Yeah. This is a real world villain who is a little bit more complicated. And I can see, not myself per se, but I can see our world in that. And I can see a little bit of his point. But then I'm glad that Mon Mothma is, trying to take a stand as best as she can.
I love that you turn this into a horror film where Hera's like, Daddy, there's a monster man outside. No, there's not. And then shifts. There is. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, the truth of Xiono is up for debate. I think Alex from Star Wars Explained has a good video running down like is there a possibility he's actually in league with someone, which would be a complex bit of storytelling. But I like just taking what we saw in the Ahsoka series only, the implication that, we know that he is from a wealthier planet, a wealthier family, and maybe he is not as hard hit by the atrocities of the Empire, nor is his family. So it may be all kind of theoretical to him. He didn't fight in the war, and he's got like, I want to be, reelected. I want to be cutting ribbons on, new galactic accomplishments of look what the New Republic did. I did that for you. I'm Senator Xiono. Yay. That's where his mindset is at. And because there is that sort of like, what's in this for me as a politician, being a senator, I want to wave away anything that's a distraction to what's going to make me look good. And so that's part of what I read in it of like, this is, if this was true, it would really be a bump in what I want to do and what I want to get out of this. So let's just get this out of the way. But then I think where you get into like real interesting political complexity is my reading of Senator Xiono is I want to boo at him. I don't think he has good motivations. But he is pressing on an issue that Mothma and Leia and Hera are all right to be concerned about of we want to disarm. We want to have just this small defense league. We don't want to see every shadow as a threat and go pointing our guns at it. We want to lead with diplomacy, empathy, kindness, compromise. Yeah, but sometimes that shadow is a real threat, and so we do have to point a gun at it. And I think our heroes, Mothma, Leia, Hera, the Jedi over time are always wrestling with when do I raise the saber and when don't I? And I think Xiono is manipulatively taking advantage of their goodwill to not be warmongers by saying, you're warmongers. There's no threat you should ever be worried about. And, you could dive deeper in it, but I love that Hera's perspective is, if we nip this in the bud, there won't be a full out war. You're calling me a warmonger, and what I'm trying to do is stop a war with minimal conflict. If Thrawn's back, let's send a small squad and arrest him before it becomes a full-scale war called Dave Filoni's movie. Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think you're right on that. I think there's you look at him, where we know what we know of his family, and we know what. I'm just thinking of Kaz, where they're a little bit of a domineering. You got to go this direction, and Kaz goes left of what his dad wants, that kind of thing. It's been a while since I watched The Resistance, but also this is an advertisement for how valuable I think Resistance is to the overall Star Wars storytelling in this era, whether or not it was a super watched show or not. But Xiono having a little bit of that privilege, a little bit of like. It wasn't that he just simply didn't, quote, choose a side. I think he wasn't affected by either side, right? So he's in that ivory tower, whether it's a literal ivory tower or not. And I think that's at play here. So it's easier to deny the threat. I think you're right. I think he's playing with the stuff, and I think that's what happens. Is use the right buzzwords and you raise the right questions around legitimate issues that need to be talked about, discussed, and measured, and then you can hide either your true intentions or just muddy the waters. And I think that's what was fun and frustrated about the character, right? You do want to boo him. You do want to boo him because we know our heroes and we know they're right. We have that benefit. But even those in the room, Mothma, I don't think knows that Hera's necessarily right. That's why she wants to confirm it. That this is all in action. We're seeing it happen. This is again the value of going back and analyzing the stories and how we got there. So no, I think well said on Xiono.
And the final thing I'll say about Mothma and Leia, I loved Leia's intervention with 3PO is very heroic, and just hearing, General or Senator Leia Organa, leader of, the Republic Defense, is just that's exciting. The Defense Council, that's what she's leader of. I think for me, the way I read Mothma is, if it were up to her, and she had formed a new government where she had tons and tons of executive power, she'd just go like, yeah, Hera, I trust you, or I'll ask you like I did. This isn't just personal, right? This is a real threat. I look you in the eyes. I believe you. Mothma would just say, go. But this is the complexity. Mothma does not want to seize all that power into one person. She wants to compromise, work together, put up with a Xiono for the benefit of creating a better society. And that's the really challenging part. We watch a show like this and we just want our hero to seize all this executive power and go, you're right, Hera, go kick ass. But do we actually want an executive to have that much power in a real political structure? And that's what Mothma is trying to navigate, and why it's so heroic to me. So with all this trying to avoid a war, there's probably going to be one. It's probably going to be Dave Filoni's movie, is what many fans are guessing. Our current understanding is that Filoni's live-action film will be a culmination of this New Republic era. It's the New Republic that's tying it all together. Fans are currently assuming that it will be Thrawn versus the New Republic. Since we know Thrawn doesn't actually take down the New Republic, Ken, what do you think will be lost in that story of Thrawn versus the New Republic? How will the New Republic be changed?
This is a great question because, and this is where you take in Bloodlines and some of the stories we know, which, Bloodline is 7 years before Force Awakens, roughly? 6?
Yeah, 6-ish, yeah.
And all that stuff, and Ransom, Casterfo, and all those characters. And we know that you can't go back and rewrite those books to mention the Great Thrawn War, right? We're in this exciting new era where we're kind of establishing. So how well they play in those boundaries, and I know there's questions about how well Dave plays in those boundaries that books and comics put out in front of him. I wonder what they'll lose. Maybe they'll gain too much hubris. Maybe they'll gain this, whatever. We won that one too. On to the next one, and even more complacency will set in. Because by the time we meet up with him again, and everyone on Chancellor Vilcham and everyone on Hosnian Prime, there's a lot of complacency, a lot of we're good. Oh, also though, I'm thinking on the fly, but also in calling Leia a warmonger, there could also be a real actual lost life, planets, people where there's definitely a world weariness, a galaxy weariness to where they don't want to do this again. So twofold for me.
Yeah. How about you, Jennifer? What do you think is going to be the cost to the New Republic if it is Thrawn versus the New Republic in Filoni's film?
I don't know. I really loved that episode in The Mandalorian season 3, episode 3. It was one of my favorites. And actually, I had a moment where I was like, that episode, it really stood out to me. And it was very exciting because you really began to see I want to say not empire, but imperial remnants kind of still taking root, right? Like still wanting to do what they want to accomplish, using the New Republic, using the mind flayer on Dr. Pershing, which is like, oh, whoa, this is a very questionable thing. So I think seeing things like that continuing to unfold is really important. And I think that could relate to Thrawn and how Thrawn could work with these people, right? It just, I don't know, it makes it more connected and less, as opposed to it just being, this is the Thrawn, war, right? It's like all these people are coming together for this cause.
That's a really great point that Thrawn's war could be one of propaganda as well. Of Thrawn having the intelligence to say, like, he knows setting up a government and controlling everybody's heart. He probably knows, like, yeah, Mothma and Leia are going to respond like this, but there are people doing dubious things like claiming they can readjust the mind flayer. What if I kind of expose those things? What if I whisper to the Imperial remnants who are, some of them are being treated really, really well, and some of them are being given numbers and feel dehumanized? Can I radicalize them with propaganda and get the New Republic to attack itself from the inside? And also send a bunch of Night Sister witches. See our previous conversations about whether or not the Night Sisters are actually going to work with Thrawn. But attack them with propaganda and witches, you got them.
Yes, because they set that up. At the beginning of that episode, we see Dr. Pershing, being greeted by these wealthy people who are just so clueless. And who, he's like, one guy's like, oh, Republic, I have rebels. I have no idea. I try to stay out of politics, right? And I think that Thrawn could use that and say, these elites are out of touch with you everyday people. And we see poor Dr. Pershing, even though he's being welcomed, he's not being treated very well, obviously with the mind flayer by the end, but like he doesn't really have anybody who is willing to fight for him or help him or make him feel good and cozy, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, Kane comes in and manipulates him, but he gets, in my opinion, trapped in the bureaucracy where some people know that he's talented and skilled. They're having him do this seminar in the Galaxy's Opera House, and on one hand, he's being treated as like, you're a genius, but then when he gets at his day job, it's data entry. Yeah. And he's like, this is a waste of me. And maybe if Kane hadn't manipulated him, maybe the system would have corrected over time. Maybe he would have filled out the right forms. They would have said, yep, we're going to bring you to this lab. You're going to work under this, supervision, but we're going to, let you be you and be a scientist, maybe that would have happened eventually without Kane's manipulation. But how many little incidents like that are happening throughout the galaxy that are bureaucracy moving maybe in the correct direction, but moving slow enough that somebody like Thrawn can manipulate them. Because that's what I think happens in that episode is maybe bureaucracy is moving slowly in the right direction. The New Republic's moving slowly in the right direction, but Kane can manipulate it before it gets there.
I love what you're suggesting, Jen, and Joseph adding great points to it of Thrawn having the intelligence to get others around him to be like, oh, these elites. Anyway, give us more power to oppress you. Like,
right.
I was watching news clips this morning about that, and it wasn't Thrawn. So
it wasn't his subtlety. No,
no.
Yeah, I think I think we're one of the things that I'm interested in is the if there is a kind of a more full scale conflict and people suffer, worlds suffer. The senators who are burying their head in the sand in Ahsoka, who are not even willing to contemplate, ooh, yeah, if Thrawn comes back, he could really unite people. That there's a line in Ahsoka, I didn't write it down, about the senator pushing on Hera of like, I'm really paraphrasing here, but like, why are you choosing, to escalate? And she's like, it's not a choice. Thrawn's coming and he's going to attack us. I'm trying to get into a position of defense. If even those senators are like, okay, Thrawn's causing revolutions on planets, he's sending force witches. The threat's here, the threat's real. We rise up. We have this battle. We defeat Thrawn, but there are stakes and there are costs. And the appetite in the galaxy would be like, we are never going to listen to another whisper of the Empire's back. We beat him on Endor. Then that was supposed to be the kind of final. Then we beat him on Jakku. Then 10 years later, Thrawn comes out of the woodwork, and we suffer and suffer and suffer, and they're gone. They're gone. Fingers in the ears, never want to hear about the Empire again. That to me really creates the atmosphere that we see in the sequel era, where it's political death for a senator to agree with Leia that they need to worry about the First Order.
Yeah, I love that. A little bit of that complacency setting in from the we already did this. Those it's exciting. I don't think anyone outside of us. I actually think there'd be a lot of people, but just give me a 6-part series called the New Republic Backroom Debate Sessions. Just a lot of senators talking.
Yeah.
Yes.
For Filoni's film, it's also interesting to think, like, if it is indeed Heir to the Empire, Thrawn versus the New Republic, there's also a possibility of it becoming the version of Return of the Jedi that Larry Kasdan wanted. The audience is made to feel the cost of that conflict because maybe some of our characters actually die. I'm not super predicting that because that's not been Filoni's modus operandi. I mean, he killed Kanan, fair enough.
Yeah.
But that's just an interesting thing to think about if they defeat Thrawn, but the cost is huge emotionally to the galaxy and to us as the audience. So we can kind of feel that like, oh man, after you go through that, wouldn't you be in the head place to just say, never again? I have to, for my own mental health, believe the Empire is gone because I can't go through that again.
I'm just picturing a end of the year in memoriam. Din Djarin, Grogu, Greef Karga, IG-11, Carson Taylor,
IG-12 or whatever, 13, whichever IG we're on by that point.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll talk more about who might feature in the second half. We're going to close out the first half of our discussion here. Are there any other New Republic moments in Ahsoka, Ken, that you really enjoyed? You know, from the political meetings to fighter pilots, any other specific like New Republic moments that excited you to see in Ahsoka?
Yeah, let's go a little ForceCenter old school because 2019 is old school and 2020 is old school. Carson Teva, man, that's why we love the guy. Other than Paul Young Kim is just a wonderful person to have in the Star Wars galaxy, but just him having those moments of something's going on here. It's what we wanted and loved it. And you mentioned the scene with Tuttle. I was going to highlight that of just of the frustration, the bureaucracy. Tim Meadows. It's hard to root against Tim Meadows, but he's not a evil person. He's like, I got forms, man. And you got an evil person in the room, like you said. That's an excellent point. Manipulating it, of course. But yeah, that's the moments. The pilot stuff's awesome too. That might also be because it's a real world director showing up, and that's kind of fun. But I just loved. I'm thinking back to the excitement of the first moment. Carson was like, "Them connected dots," and it was like, "Oh, this story is bigger." Not that I didn't love Mando season 1 being kind of this lone wolf and cub off in the shadows of this new galaxy being restored, but I just love that. Yeah, we got a bigger picture, and we're going to connect to it.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's some great stuff, New Republic stuff in Mandalorian that I love. For me, I love the prison ship episode where you see that the New Republic really is a force. When those X-Wings show up, it is a force. I love that the New Republic is like, yep, we need to have prison ships, but let's try to man them with these cool security droids. And that to me is some functional New Republic stuff that I love. I love on Adelphi the X-Wing, Y-Wing pilot's bar, just the aesthetic of the pilot's bar and knowing that they're hanging out there and it's so cool to see Zeb that we must not forget what Zeb actually said of like he's also saying they're stretched thin, which is the thing we haven't talked about as much, but comes up again and again in Mandalorian, and I think sometimes and Ahsoka whisks over our head the idea of like they mean well, they only have so many resources and they're trying. That comes up in the Tuttle scene, that comes up with Zeb of like it's been taking them to a long time to even respond to one of our hails because they're so overwhelmed. So that's some stuff I love in Mandalorian. In Ahsoka, there's a moment where Hera has her first conference with the New Republic, and one of the senators is pushing back on Hera, saying, "Well, we have former Imperials, all throughout the government, and they've all taken an oath of loyalty to the New Republic." It's one of Hera's good spicy longs where she says, "Long live the Empire" doesn't sound like the kind of loyalty we're looking for. Again, pressing that button on like an amazing and, in my opinion, correct move to say, we're not just going to say if you ever touch the Empire, you're bad, you're on a prison planet. We're going to try to bring you in, but a couple of those people are going to be problems, and you got to be honest about that too. So those are some favorite moments for me in Ahsoka and in Mandalorian. Jennifer, how about for you? Do you have any just favorite little storytelling moments of seeing the New Republic in Ahsoka or Mandalorian?
With Carson Teva, it's a character that initially I was like, oh no, he's going to be like this highway patrol guy, right? But he's really grown on me, and I love it. Like you're saying, Ken, that he's just like something's going on. I don't know, because he's kind of like the audience, or I love that, and I also enjoy just with a New Republic in Ahsoka specifically, is that we are seeing the fuller picture, and that we are seeing that they mean well, but the system is not working. And there are people that are rightfully saying, hey, we need to be aware of what is going on. And there are Imperial loyalists who are trying to, have their agenda set out, and nobody's listening to these people. So I like that. I think that that's really, it just gives a more complex picture of the New Republic as opposed to just kind of how it was painted perhaps in The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett, for that matter, all deal with Outer Rim, and I like the idea that Carson Teva is like, no, hey, we're reaching out, we're trying to be there. We have these outposts, it's scattered. We don't have a ton of people, but we have them out there. And Carson Teva is really like, he's like, almost this like counselor at a school. Is like, I know all the kids' names. Yeah, I know why that kid is misbehaving. I know who that kid's best friend is, and then you go up the chain and to the top of like a school board and it's all shits on a map because there's macro and there's micro. And Carson Teva is our micro perspective of like, I've seen it. I know the people. It's human and real to me. And I think that's an interesting story in politics as well. Like, sorry. The leader can't know every person. The school board president cannot know every kid's name. Yeah. The counselor at one school can. Yeah.
See, I want Carson to be like, Din Djarin, they think he's a righteous dude, and just go from there. And so I want to be clear. I want to directly more answer your question about Ahsoka too. I love the inner world is a great way to look at it, and I didn't. There was some things I didn't love about the way some of the acting, writing, and execution of that scene on the Corellia. But taking that aside, I loved how not just embedded Morgan Elsbeth's people were, but her company. And the need for this, and we need this stuff, and this is what's going on. It's why you couldn't just easily cast it aside, and play that. It was other moments that we've already seen of them, which is some of the stuff going on in Mando season 3, right? Of just now we're just destroying some of the resources. So it's these two complicated paths, but I did love seeing that there as well. And you could also, Jen, do your thing of Carson is the small town deputy driving around in a pickup truck with one siren on the top. Exactly. And he's the one that almost discovers there's something going on in the house. Right. Knocks on the door. Is everything okay here? And, there's chaos behind the door. We've seen that in films, and he kind of represents that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're going to take a quick break, but first, our recommendation for Audible. Ken?
Hey, it is perfect for today's discussion, which is why we have selected it today. We are recommending you try out Bloodline by Claudia Gray. It's an old enough book now that maybe you might have missed it when it first came out. Here's your chance to go back in and do so on us. Download your free audiobook today by going to audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. Again, that's audibletrial.com/ForceCenter for your free audiobook. Learn more about the napkin bombing. What happened to Maydeen? We've got to figure that out. And it's all on us at audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. All right, now a quick break, and we'll be back here real soon if you're on the audio side. But if you're on the video side, we're still going to be here. Stick around for more Force Center. Welcome back to Force Center, episode 630. 630 in our series. We're having a lot of fun looking at the New Republic, rooting for them, finding ways to move them forward in a stronger fashion. Joseph, take us to our next sections here.
Yeah, we've been looking at sort of what's come so far in terms of New Republic storytelling, the slow build, and finally really seeing the conflicts at the very top of the New Republic in Ahsoka. Now we're going to be looking a little bit ahead. So at the end of Mandalorian Season 3, Din asks Carson Teva to provide him with basically bounty hunter jobs that are moral, so he can make a good impression on Grogu. And he's like, I know your government's not working too great, and there's a bunch of things you're concerned about that they aren't. Hey, you want to hire me to handle those? I'd really like that. To me, this potentially really sets up season 4 of The Mandalorian to be about Din being in kind of off the books Ranger of the New Republic, but Din going from bounty hunter, I'll take any job to, keep my covert safe and all that, to I am basically working for the New Republic off books. So what kind of New Republic stories would you be hoping for in season 4, Ken, to advance the New Republic story, but also to still tell Din and Grogu's story?
I think there's a movie out right now, or a movie coming out with Jason Statham called The Beekeeper. And I think I'm starting to realize it might just be pitching that of he works in the shadows, he's violent, he's messy, he'll kill you because you're messing up the system and you're harming the innocent people. And I'm here, and now we just need Jeremy Irons to be like, he's a beekeeper, part of a program. That's what I would want. I
have not been watching any broadcast cable television because I have not seen that.
Me neither.
You could be making that up.
It sounds like I am. Jason Statham stars in The Beekeeper, right? Like it sounds like a Simpsons parody that Homer wants to get tickets to.
We've got the accountant. We've got the beekeeper. What can we do next? What can we possibly do now?
Absolutely. Check it out. It's real. I might just have to watch the movie now, but it seems, and I don't know the whole plot of the movie. Don't hold, if you're a Beekeeper fan out there, I apologize. But just that thing of just like, it's not, I don't want to just phrase it as like justified killings, because Din might not be killing him, might be bringing him into justice. But this idea of, hey, I'm out here, we're trying to build some things, and as we try to restore this, you're using this system to continue with oppression or do so for your own power, or you're just misusing it. I'm here to handle that, and in the process of handling that, uncovering some of the bigger pictures and tying it to films that might be coming or stories that we already heard. I don't need Din suddenly to be like, you know what, I'm in. I'm going to run for local city council here. I like him where he is. I don't see it as not get involved. I see it as a compromise on the life he wants and the life maybe he needs to lead. So that's where I would go. He would be the galaxy's beekeeper.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued about the New Republic stories that could happen, but then also excited to see, well, what does Din want? What does Din need? What does Grogu need? Maybe there's more of a focus on Grogu needing to confront more of his past. So how could those two things come together? And some thoughts that come to mind is we've had the storytelling of Grief Karga really doing a great job to try to make Navarro a place of peace and hospitality and working together, and frustration with not trusting that the New Republic will be there for them. He called Carson Teva for help, and Carson Teva got him help by going to Din. So in Grief's book is that, so with Din being on Navarro, a little bit of like, would Navarro join the New Republic? I can't remember how much they dealt with that possibility at the end of Mandalorian season 3, but that seems like an interesting thing to deal with. I think, should Mandalore join the New Republic is something that Din might find himself pulled into. But on the adventure of the week, Din getting jobs for Carson Teva, that seems like some great way to pull some strings of, I don't know if we even need to see Thrawn, but we as the audience could know, like, oh, yep, that's a plot that Thrawn is beginning, that Din is kind of unraveling, and Din goes through whatever emotional journey he needs to for his adventure, but we the audience can see through Din's adventure Thrawn beginning to create strongholds of support. I would love it if Carson was like, there's this tiny village on this small planet, it needs help, could you go help them? And it is like a Night Sister attack because they want a resource or whatever, and we could go back to some classic Din has never read Wikipedia, he doesn't know anything about the galaxy, and they just come back to somebody like hopefully he has Bo-Katan on speed dial. This is his Wikipedia. Like, I met these red-robed warrior women. They kicked my metal ass. What? And she's like, yeah, those are Night Sisters. Let me explain. I would really like that.
You're saying there's witches in Star Wars?
Yeah. So Jennifer, what kind of, if Din is sort of a ranger of the New Republic, what kind of storytelling would you be excited about for season 4 of Mandalorian?
Initially, when I was thinking about this, I actually want it to be more connected and less serial of the week. But now you're presenting a new case for me that I kind of like. It's almost like creating like a puzzle. So each episode is kind of its own little piece of the puzzle, but we kind of start seeing it coming together, which would set us up for the movie, which is going to come. Is it going to come after The Mandalorian season 4? Do we know that?
Sure.
We do not know.
We don't know, right?
We don't know.
Okay.
We don't know.
Nothing.
Right. Because I do wonder how much they want to set us up for that movie. Because it could just be like little, like, breadcrumbs, or it could be like a real cliffhanger where I got to go see this movie to see really what's happening at the end of season 4.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is like gets my total like business side of things, brain going of when is this movie going to come out? When can it come out? How long do they want to make people wait?
Right.
How much do they want to just say, screw it, this is a movie for people who've been watching all these TV shows? Or how much do they want to say, no, you don't have to have seen those shows? I have a hard time staying focused on the creative because I get so focused on the business when we talk about but I think for me, the most important thing is I really do think that Filoni and Favreau have been working together to put these big puzzle pieces in place for building the themes and the tensions and the big plot pieces.
Right. I mean, because do we know if it's even going to be in the movie theaters? It could just be a Disney Plus movie, but that to me seems, I don't want to say a waste. Maybe they could do like a simultaneous release where it's in theaters for a limited time. But again, you have a Star Wars movie in the theaters, like you want to let that play out. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, but this is all such like, what will the industry be in 3 or 4 years, right? Because and I think the challenge for Star Wars, and we'll get back to the creative rather than the business.
I was all right.
No, I think it's I think this is a really legitimate conversation because I think for the escapism part of things, you just want to be invested in the story and what will it mean for Din and what will he learn about Thrawn's plot. But we live in a world where it's so easy to be distracted by all this stuff. But I think a challenge for Star Wars has always been in the movie theaters is no reporter, no person will give them the chance to set the terms of what they think is a success for a film. It's got to be a blockbuster,
right?
Like A New Hope to Revenge of the Sith to Force Awakens. It's got to blow the doors off the place, or it's an utter failure. It's fascinating to think that in 4 years could they set the conversation, set the terms of we're not trying to beat, the Force Awakens box office. We're doing a limited 2-weekend run for hardcore fans who want to see it in the movie theater. We're expecting to make this reasonable amount of millions of dollars, and then it's going to be on Disney Plus. That might be a legitimate business model by the time this movie actually comes out. Or Filoni might be in offices, slamming his fist on desks now going, theatrical, put it in my contract.
But I think that brings up the point about Ahsoka and some of the things. I was talking with some people who are not really, like, they like Star Wars, but they're not hardcore fans. They're very casual viewers. And they were saying they were lost. They were like, I know that this is supposed to be significant. I don't know what that mural was. Like, what should I know that? Like, I'm like, yeah, right. So again,
every time we bring this up, we hear very strongly from people in the comments that they themselves or have friends who had, on the other hand, absolutely no problem.
Right.
So we hear strong opinions on both sides, which makes it extremely difficult for the companies to navigate because I think both are true. It's utterly subjective. Sorry to interject there, Jennifer.
No, I think you're right. Yeah. Ken,
No, I had one of my good friends who's he and his son, Rebels is their favorite Star Wars program. Halfway through Ahsoka, he texts me, he goes, dude, this is boring me. I don't want homework to go back to Rebels. And he goes, that's me and Jack's favorite show. But to your point, Joseph, that's what's so difficult about it, because you're right. Then someone will be like, my uncle's never seen Star Wars, and he loved this, and that's the balance that you have to try to find.
Yeah, and that's just the sort of the question hanging over this New Republic movie,
Right.
So in some ways, it's like, for me, I'm just like, okay, I'm just going to go in the bubble. I'm just going to say, hey, if you're in the bubble, if you've been paying attention, if you're following, like, oh yeah, there's all these threads of the New Republic disarming their fleet, and you can follow it from Carthon, where Mix Mayfield is taking apart equipment, to what the scene in Ahsoka, and like there's all this great little storytelling to follow if you just commit to I'm in the bubble and who cares.
Right.
But as soon as you try to start to have sort of empathy of like, does everybody understand what's going on? It becomes a battlefield because there are people over here going, I'm utterly lost. This is garbage. And people being like, I've never seen a second of this, and this is the best Star Wars ever. Why are you telling me I should be lost?
Yeah.
And so then does that make a blockbuster? Does that make the numbers that they want to make in theory, right? I don't.
I think it could.
I don't know.
I think they're going to lean heavily on the general side of it. But again, to the business, Joseph, you're right. This is what happens, right? The business starts taking over. You spiral out of control. In 4 years, it's going to be Disney Plus on Apple TV presented by Amazon. Like, we don't know what.
You can only watch on your Taco Bell app.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
We
no,
do.
it's so true.
I have to go back to football. I have to sign up for Peacock to watch one game this week.
What?
One game. I'm already paying for YouTube TV Live. So this is the business aspect. I don't want to sign up for Peacock, but I got to watch my team lose, and that's part of the conversation.
This is a beautiful place we've come to. Like, I have to sign up to Peacock to watch the Dolphins lose in the snow. Like, is that spy code? What are you talking about?
Can you imagine saying that 30 years ago? It'd be like, what? What are you
we all got very excited. Jennifer, did you have more thoughts about Din and Mandalorian Season 4's role in the New Republic story?
No, but I do think of the business side a lot. I do, because I want people to watch it, and I want them to have a big budget and be able to tell the stories that they want to tell. And, so.
Yeah, it's a fascinating time because I think a lot of Star Wars value is being an interconnected story. It always has been a generational story. Even the first story, A New Hope, is referencing stories that we haven't heard or seen yet. Yeah. It is, people have pointed out, it's baked into what Star Wars is. It's an interconnected, bunch of myths, but we're in this moment where the industry is really questioning interconnected stories. So fascinating. Maybe that's what Din can be, a ranger of the New Republic. He needs to do commercials. It's okay to have an interconnected story. Look at me, Din Djarin. I used to not understand any of this, but if you ask Bo-Katan and Greef Karga, they'll tell you. They'll tell you galactic history.
Carson Tevez should do it. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I knew nothing.
I didn't need to know that for my. It's like, okay, that doesn't affect me. Fly low over the ocean. Got it. Whose parent? I don't care. I'll still fly low over the ocean, whether I know who Caleb Doom and Kanan Jarrus are. All right. Now we are going to get into some more storytelling that also gets into business stuff. So looking more toward the future of New Republic storytelling, if Filoni's movie is indeed the big battle of the New Republic versus Thrawn, an heir to the Empire adaptation, there is the big question of Leia, Luke, Han, Lando. Do we want them to appear? Do we want them to be central? Or, since this film has also been described as a culmination of the Mandoverse, are we wanting and expecting a new roster of heroes? Is this the story of Thrawn versus the New Republic, and the New Republic is being represented by Ezra, Hera, Din, Bo-Katan, Carson Teva, maybe Ahsoka and Sabine if they come back. Whoever the bleep Jude Law is in Skeleton Crew. Is he one of the main stars of this? Ken, how do you feel about that really big question of, if it is an adaptation, is it this new era, this new generation of heroes that's being developed? And if so, where does that leave our OGs?
I think need is the word we don't love to use around here because it's very possessive. But I think they need to be in the story. I think to what level to be determined. Because I have no doubt this is going to be what you're talking about, a new roster of stars. And I think that's correct. I think it should be, because it would make sense just to have the big four at the center of it, story-wise. We'll talk about the business and reality of it after, but story-wise, because the galaxy's just too big, and there's wonderful roster of players we now have to pull from. So a little column A, a little column B colliding, but again, outside of the realities, I did love like Ahsoka mentioning Senator Organa, like that. That was not just a fun Star Wars is referencing Star Wars moment. It was a reality. It was what would be happening. So because these characters are established and they're Hall of Fame characters for a reason. So yeah, I need them to appear.
Yeah.
Dangerous.
I know. Well, I think For me, I do think it makes sense that it is primarily a new generation of heroes because it is the culmination of the Mandoverse. I think there's a good possibility that there's maybe like a new big three, and maybe it's Ezra, Hera, and Jude Law. Who knows? But I feeling like name Jude Law. Or Lude Jaw.
Lude Jaw.
Lude Jaw. That's his name in Skeleton Crew, I'm sure. Hashtag Lude Jaw. I think Ezra may be the lead because I think it's a long game of where does Ezra need to be. Facing down the Sith was Luke's destiny because of the life that he led, because Luke is the son of Vader and the target the primary target of the Emperor eventually, Ezra was as well. But I think there is some really interesting storytelling too of like Ahsoka and Sabine being at peace with Thrawn got back, but Ezra got back, and that's even more important. He's where he needs to be. Feel like there's some breadcrumbs to like Ezra is the one fated to face Thrawn, which would really position Ezra possibly as like the Luke, Anakin, Rey figure of this Filoni film. And then who knows with this massive cast of other characters of if it is, you know, if you're telling the general public that it's the culmination of the Mandoverse, maybe need to feature, you know, the Mando featured in. But to Ken's point, I think there's been this big discussion in Star Wars storytelling about not being willing to let go of the legacy characters or tapping into the legacy characters. When Luke appeared in Mandalorian Season 2, there were various articles criticizing Star Wars' inability to let go and move on. I have always looked at it from the perspective of if you are in the bubble of Star Wars storytelling and you're enjoying this connected galaxy, there's this sigh of enjoyment for me because that's who would answer Grogu's call in this timeline. If there's a political question, if an Imperial remnant rises, who in the New Republic is going to be like, yeah, we got to deal with that? Mother bleeping Leia Organa is going to be the one who answers that call. I'd love to see Han. I'd love to see Lando and Chewie and throw 9 Numb in there. Who cares? But Leia, it makes sense for Leia to be involved. It isn't a clinging to nostalgia. It's a why wouldn't she be involved in this fight question for me. And then Luke's a whole other thing because that gets into his story of the new Jedi Order. But Jen, I want to bring you in here. How do you feel about this balance between new characters in Filoni's film versus where Leia would show up and all that kind of thing?
Well, now you've changed my mind because before I was like, no. I mean, I don't mind that they're mentioned. I think that's important. But you're right. Like, it makes sense that these characters would be heavily involved. To not have them there would be a little bit strange, right? I think it's okay to put the focus. I love the idea of Ezra being the main focus of this movie. That would be really exciting. But I do feel a sense of like, oh boy, it's going to get into Avengers territory, right? The Avengers assemble. You have all these incredible characters, and I mean, if you're a kid, you want to put them all on the board, right? But does it make sense story-wise? I mean, it kind of does, but then people are going to accuse Star Wars of, just trying to copy Marvel, the success of that, right? But it does make sense. I don't envy them. I don't know how they're going to do it, but you have to have all these characters, both new and legacy, on the board to tell a complete story, to set you up for the next installment.
Yeah,
I don't need them on the poster, but
right, no, exactly.
Yeah.
No, they just have to kind of just be just a little taste,
little tiny Zeb, little tiny Boba Fett, right in the corner of the perhaps overly busy poster. I think as long as it is structured, you know, in a way that there is kind of a big 3 to 4, which is I think about what a film like this can manage, or what Star Wars films have managed to different people's opinion of varying level of successes, about 3 to 4 mainish characters, and maybe Thrawn is one of them. And then it is gonna. I think it is gonna be. Well, hey, Zeb, didn't pop in through a portal, but Zeb does show up on your right, on your left. So that's fascinating to me to find that balance. I do want to take a moment to just talk about Luke specifically, because if it is the New Republic. This is the era of the New Republic. It's the New Republic story. It's can the New Republic stop Thrawn? Characters like Ezra or even Din, Hera, certainly, Bo-Katan, especially if Mandalore has joined the New Republic. They all really make sense. Luke it's the new Jedi Order, and you're dealing with the reality of people who have grown up with this story, this heir to the Empire adaptation, with a lot of opinions about Luke's involvement. But we're starting to tell this new story, and the New Republic and the new Jedi Order are connected in this new canon, but differently than they were in the EU. Ken, how would you feel if Luke is not abstaining from the fight, but like made a really different choice of like, the New Republic's got this, Ezra's got this. I'll run defense-only missions. Do you want a hospital ship protected? Do you need, a village evacuated? I will save people, but I will not, like the Jedi of old, be leading a battalion in some fight against Thrawn. How would you feel if Luke's role was minimized because he made a really different choice?
I think philosophically, I would love that. What you're talking about. This is someone who wants to build something new by learning from the mistakes of the past, because you have to own that. You have to move from it. That would make a lot of sense. I think we'd have some repeats of past discourse of, nope, ignite the green, charge down the hill, which makes me love what you're proposing even more. Well, not necessarily what you're proposing, but what you're saying. You didn't use the word need in front of that. But it would be, I have to be honest, it would be slightly frustrating, right? Like, it would be like, why are you reforming the Jedi Order? Again, I know you don't want to take rank. You don't want to be General Luke Skywalker anymore. You want to, but why do the Jedi exist? Why do you want them to exist, and what's their place in this timeline? And it might be what you're talking about, but that would seem, from a overview point, almost stubborn. Like, but Luke's maybe got some of that in him, as we see later on, and maybe see in the past. So it's intriguing. I'm going to take the realities of discourse and set it on a shelf and not even look at it. It's intriguing because he's got to answer that. That's what he's doing. He's not just forming this for fun. He's forming the Jedi Order, building it up because he believes at this point in his life that they need to be there. And why? And if this breaks out, would he just be like, they got it? Or would he be like, this is my place and this is my purpose in this fight? That's the big why.
Yeah,
I don't know yet.
I mean,
but yeah.
he showed up and fought for Grogu. Conveniently, that was a bunch of horrible, unstoppable death robots that needed to be stopped anyway. I don't think anybody's questioning the morality of him cutting down.
Pretty cool. Pretty cool.
It was cool, and also like totally, he's answering the call of help of a child and cutting through murder robots of an Imperial remnant. Pretty morally defensible as defense. But yeah, getting mired in a war. And so my question then about this becomes, if you're trying to keep this a little bit cleaner, a little bit linear, just handling Luke is that's a story unto itself. What's Luke's role in the war against Thrawn is a story unto itself, not a quick subplot. So how do you handle that?
You can't.
And Luke, sorry.
Unless it's in a book.
Yeah, Luke in this era is
series.
so undefined, right? We've heard so many stories. Chuck Wendig saying, "Well, I had Luke stuff in Aftermath. I had to pull it out." They've intentionally been like, "We're not giving answers," and now I think we're careening towards there got to be some answers.
And Filoni's thinking about this and been thinking about this for years, right? And Filoni's been the one who's like, okay, Luke is not untouchable anymore. We'll tell his story. Here's him building his Jedi school. Here's his philosophy, all that. So since we're already courting controversy, we'll go even deeper. If Leia, Luke, Han, Lando, etc., returned in this New Republic versus Thrawn film at any level, if they're the main characters, sorry, Ezra, if they're the main characters, if they're in a quick cameo, how are you both feeling about the whole question of I versus recasting? Ken? I know this could be a whole episode of our podcast too. But
I thought you're gonna put Jen on the hot seat. I have decided. I thought about this morning over coffee and an English muffin. I am on the side of it's time to recast, and that's not a repudiation of digital. I thought there's been some successes in that. I think the second go around with Luke was great. As a Dial of Destiny fan, there's no part of me that is taken out of the movie with Harrison Ford. That's just me. I know that's not a shared opinion, maybe worldwide, but I really love that film, and I love the opening sequence with Digi Indy. But I think you got some of the players in place. Who's been watching too much sports recently? I think you got the Aldens, you got the Donald Glovers, and you got some others you could put in there. I think it's time. I want new actors.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Jennifer, go for it.
Wow.
What do you think?
Oh
I
my
sense some
gosh.
disagreement.
Planting your flag. Okay.
Sorry. And I know she was Connex. I want Billy Lord as Leia.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, this really troubles my soul. It troubles my soul because I really like what they did with Luke in The Mandalorian with the deep fake tech. It got so good.
Okay.
But,
By Boba Fett, yeah.
Yeah, right. Oh, Boba Fett. Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at the behind the scenes of that, and you see the actor, I can't remember his name, who was portraying the physical of Luke.
Graham Hamilton in Book of Boba Fett.
Thank you, Graham Hamilton.
I believe Max Lloyd in Mandalorian, but Graham Hamilton in
Book of Boba Fett. That's what I'm thinking of. Thank you. He was really, really good, and I could see him recast. But the problem is, and I don't know, I'm so conflicted because then when I watched Solo, I totally believe him as Han Solo, Alden Ehrenreich. I thought he did a phenomenal job of keeping some mannerisms but not making it an impression, which is so important.
He was an actor, yeah.
Right, but then people get mad and they're like, well, you had this guy who's an impressionist who should have played Solo. It's like, no, that doesn't mean that he's a good actor. It just means that he can mimic the voice and do the mannerisms, right? Yeah. That's going to be a whole other layer that you're going to put on top of this. That I don't think that we need to have that. I think we need to move away from it. You can use him in a hologram. You can use him in a short scene. But I think you cannot have them as the main characters if you're going to do AI. And if you're going to recast, just know that there's going to be a whole other discourse around, that person. Look at Alden Ehrenreich. Nowadays, he's like not talking badly about Star Wars, but I don't think he'd want to come back. Although maybe for the right money.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the third option is have, like they handled it in Ahsoka, have Luke and R2 deliver messages. Luke, R2, and Chewie can deliver messages. In Lobot, they're all just
letter.
They're all just like Han, Leia, and Lando and Luke can't be here, but we all have messages from them,
right?
Because
or their
you'll
voice.
Accept our guest.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's a long and fascinating conversation. I think the conversation around deep fakes and AI, which is of course not exactly the same technology. It's this umbrella term that people are using that we could all use to define better, to talk about specific things. But that conversation has shifted in the last couple of years. I think for me, if it was real cameos of like everybody's here's a shot of Han, like fine,
right.
If it is an Avengers Portal moment, as much as I am concerned about that, fine. Put Billy D. Williams bobbly digital head on a double. Fine, who cares? If it really is cameos, if it is significant scenes, I'm really at the point of recasting.
Wow.
Yeah, I love these actors, but I also love these characters.
Right.
And I think throughout the history of Star Wars, we have had recasts. We've crossed this Rubicon, and there hasn't been a big conversation about it because people aren't as emotionally invested. Genevieve O'Reilly was young Mon Mothma.
Yes.
Until it became time to cast her in Ahsoka, and that crossed a Rubicon of she's not young Mon Mothma. She's that actor from 1983 ain't doing it.
Right.
Now she's just Mothma. And it's not about timeline. It's just people age and pass away sometimes. And this is our new Mon Mothma. And nobody lost their mind because there isn't, people, Caroline Blackstone, truthers out there. I don't know. Whatever. But so I feel like that has been like, for me, like I want to spend time with these characters. Throughout the storytelling of Star Wars, we have adaptations. We have adaptations from books, from comics, from different styles of animation. If we want to treat these characters as characters, just recast them and have actors portray them. I thought Luke was great in Book of Boba Fett, but it really works, I think, because of the calm Zen Jedi thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
And also it works because Graham Hamilton was fantastic.
Yeah,
and you see the photos of him without the minor changes to make him look more like Mark Hamill. Like, just for me, just cast him if it's a larger substantive role.
What if they what if they announce, here is our new cast, the new big three? Would that blow everyone's minds? Here's our new Leia, here's our new old Han, and here is
our new old Han.
Right.
I think it would be, a discourse exploder, because I think everybody has a right to different opinions. I'm putting in my vote for casting. I'm not saying that's a truth. I think other people have different opinions. So you got that. And then it is also tied up with when is it time to move on?
Right.
Which, this is one of those, Star Wars doesn't exist in a vacuum. I think, as we've been talking about the last couple episodes, there's been a swing towards bringing back things from the past. And now I think there is a general swing in culture to say we've brought back everything we can. And that's a touchy discourse. So it isn't just the kind of, in the Star Wars bubble, recast or digital. It's tied to this much larger cultural conversation. I think if there was an announcement of here's these three actors, what I would mostly see on my social media is people who aren't really in the Star Wars bubble just being like, for God's sake, move on from the big three.
Yes.
Which is a part of the how are they going to fit into this movie or not?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's the pressure that film's going to be under, or the continued storytelling in this era of just, here you are. If they're not there for whatever reason, you're choosing to not have those characters, or you don't want to because of the realities. What's the answer? Recently, I don't think it's going to happen, but Kit Harington had that Jon Snow post season 8 Game of Thrones spinoff in the works. I was really intrigued by it.
Yeah.
I was really intrigued by it, and there were some good theories around what could it be. But it's like, if the other cast members weren't going to come back for the roles, I understand some would want to, some wouldn't. All right, so, do we not mention Sansa Stark? If Sophie Turner doesn't want to come back, or do you recast it? But the character exists or died, you'd have to answer it if the story's going to go on in some way. And I think by planting the flag here in this era, which I think was a good decision, and now having Dave and John and the team lead it into this film, like, those characters are there. And if the answer is a hologram from 90-year-old Harrison Ford going, I've had enough, I'm retired, that's the answer. Just stand by it. Or if the answer is convincing Alden to come back, or someone else to come back, and even if I'm retired, but like he's there, the character exists in this timeline, and you got to deal with it. I think Band-Aid off. It's time. I was someone who I was in the end I'm wearing my Rise of Skywalker. I really do love what ended up happening with Leia.
Yeah.
But at the time, I think we discussed it here. An Annette Bening or Meryl Streep taking over the role. Meryl Streep taking over the role for one of her good friends. I think it would have been tough. There would have been discourse. There would have been people upset. Would have been people overjoyed. But it would have been okay because you had two these wonderful actors taking on that character.
Yeah. And I think for me, what ultimately matters is what is the story, and are these characters being honored? All of them, the new ones. Is Ezra being honored? Is Din being honored? Is what Luke's decision is compelling? Is Leia's trajectory, there? Do you see a moment of, sadness and love between Han and Leia, that they got to go back to being this couple who lives through war? Are all those truths there emotionally? That's what's going to matter, because if you didn't do things because of the level of discourse, Star Wars should stop now. And,
Right.
and the discourse fades and the artwork lives on. So that's what I'm ultimately most curious about. I know Filoni wants to honor these characters, both some of the new ones that he had a hand invented whole cloth, and the ones that he's grown up loving and is going to want to do right by them. But there's so many characters to do right by. It makes it really intriguing.
Yeah.
All right, we are just about wrapping up with our New Republic conversation, and since we opened the wound anyway, I'm just going to dig in deeper. What about Cara Dune? Speaking of the New Republic, she did she did have kind of an important, I think, story within the New Republic era. And in some ways, the first vanguard of it, of somebody who, I don't think they super underlined it, but if you look at what's there in her story, somebody who comes from Alderaan, a planet of peace, but had the soul of a warrior, who you have to imagine is out of place on Alderaan, found her place in the violence of the rebellion, then felt at sea, is seen, her soul is seen by Carson Teva. He deputizes her, and then she goes off to serve this larger role, once again a part of something. Her story is kind of vital to a path that one could take through the New Republic. Obviously the former actor is not coming back, so Ken, where are you at? Are you like, that was nice, Cara Dune had a great story, let's just let it be? Or are you like, recast her, or what?
You could let it be, and I think we'd be okay. I'm not putting the controversy aside, or the beliefs expressed by Gina, but the character in season 1 I thought was a great character with a great important backstory, thematically just right in the center of that story, and there was something left on the table. Season 2, obviously, progressive character forward. I was there for it too. I don't mean to be mean, but the performance was lacking. So now you have a golden opportunity, I think, to change someone out. I just, at the end of the day, as powerful and as powerful as she was in season 1 for me, because I'm not going to go back and change my vote there. I enjoyed that character in season 1. I also think you could move on without the character.
Yeah, I think, especially looking at the potential challenge in upcoming New Republic storytelling of having a lot of characters that you don't necessarily need that one. I think if there's a storyline for Din where seeing and interacting with Cara Dune is important, then yeah, sure, recast. Why not? Jennifer?
I think of the Mariah Carey meme where they asked her about Jennifer Lopez, and she was like, I don't know her. Like, I don't know Cara Dune. I think that it's
all right,
fine.
Mariah Carey in Star Wars. Good idea.
being left where she was. And I mean, there was a reason why she was dubbed in her first movie. Remember that?
Yes,
you guys
yes,
remember that?
Haywire. Yes.
Haywire. That's it. There's a reason. So just let that be.
Yeah, and I know, as always, it's so hard because I try to think of the tattoo rule that we've joked about on ForceCenter of, like, no matter how minor of a Star Wars character, someone probably has a tattoo of them, and I know probably a lot of people saw themselves in Cara Dune, and it was one of the great things about her in the first season, and in the second season, there were some ups and downs. So for those people who are deeply attached to the character, I really empathize with, like, is there something more to be done with the character in a recast or even a novel kind of thing? But the New Republic field seems so crowded, it feels like, maybe that's fine. For my take. But shout out to people who really saw themselves in the character. I know how important that is.
They did.
All right, we are going to wrap up here. Any other hopes or dreams for New Republic storytelling, Ken?
I'd be okay with them really getting into the weeds. I made the joke earlier about 6 days in the Senate, a New Republic story or something like that. But I've enjoyed what we've gotten so far. Ahsoka being the deepest to date, but go deeper into it, right? Yeah. Just whatever the story is. I want a 45-minute episode of senators debating what to do, of Billy Lord as Leia saying this is what we got to do. Like that's what I would want. Details, you all work them out. You're creatives in Star Wars. I just want more. Don't shy away from it.
Yeah, I'm of the same mindset. I think Andor has been a great demonstration of how interesting, quote unquote, politics can be when you really tie them to feeling individuals' need, communities' need, the horror when politics become cruel. I think it would be great to really get into that depth, to attach it to the personal. I really like the character of Carson Teva. I'd love to learn a little bit more about him. Like, what did he go through in the war? Where is he from? Why does this matter to him? Why can't he let specific things go? I mean, it's fine. There's only so much room in storytelling, and it's all, I'm not criticizing that they haven't yet done that with him. But man, that'd be a great way to grow it. If like we root for him, we like him, we agree with him. Who is this cool guy? Go deeper. We got a television show to do it. The other New Republic storytelling I'd like to really dive in deep is we've had all this Outer Rim storytelling where we learn that the New Republic is trying, and they'd love to help the Outer Rim, but they can't be everywhere. I don't care if it's a television show, a book, a movie. I would love a New Republic story where there's some mid-rim crisis that they're handling the hell out of, that they're being heroes. And you really see and feel, when they didn't answer Navarro's call, this is what they were doing. They were handling these 3 crises that we feel in the mid-rim or the inner rim. And it doesn't make it okay that they're not there for the outer rim, but it's a little bit of that justice for the New Republic. We get to feel the truth that they're stretched instead of just hear it as a line of dialogue. Yeah. Jennifer, what are your hopes?
Yeah, we'll make the ending all that much more like emotional if we really genuinely do root for the New Republic based on what we're seeing and the good that they're doing and the help that they are giving. It's like, so then to see them fall is that much more devastating and entertaining to watch. Like I agree, Ken. I want to see more of these backroom discussions, and I think that's a testament to the great writing, the great acting. That it makes it so much fun. Show me the West Wing of Star Wars. Like I want to see all of that. Which obviously we have the prequels, but that's a different type of thing. I don't know. This is just a little bit more timely and current, and I like it.
Yeah, and right now we've seen it we've seen the New Republic in those sort of political scenes as a part of sprawling, exciting space fantasy stories. And I think, looking at Andor and being like, well, the meat of this episode is a tense ISB meeting where all of the machinations, and just knowing that that level of storytelling is possible for the New Republic is really exciting.
Exactly.
All right, Ken, we're going to do our social media plugs, but we're also going to do a quick ask here at the end of this particular episode. Would you like to handle the ask, or would you like me to?
I'll start and then I'll pitch to you. How about that? Team effort here, and Jen as well. Our current ask is to consider going over to Patreon, patreon.com/ForceCenter. Hey, you've heard us say that for years. Patreon has been very valuable to the continued existence of the show, and it will continue to be as the podcast industry changes, ad revenue for that changes. This is it's an interesting time. We'll just say that. But over on Patreon, we're looking if you would consider to help us get to 400 paid members. We're very close. Patreon has changed a little bit, and quite frankly, it can be confusing. There's non-paid supporters. There's people just hanging out in the lobby. We don't know why they're here at this hotel. And then there's the paid supporters, which is the lifeblood of this podcast. Joseph, we're looking to get to 400, and if we do, again, we're very close. We've got a special thing we're going to do.
That is right. So we're going this metric by subscriber number, not any specific financial number we're getting to, but just trying to have more people join the Patreon. You can ask questions. You can be a part of our Discord. And if we get to those 400 paid subscribers, we are going to do a commentary of one of the Star Wars films. Why are we being mysterious about which one? Because we're going to let you, the patrons, decide. If we reach this goal, we'll say we're going to do a commentary, and we're going to hold a vote for what film you'd like to see us do a commentary about. Ken, back to you.
Yes, indeed, and we'll do some fun stuff with that. And look, everything's on it. We've done Phantom Menace and Last Jedi. They're on our YouTube channel, but it's been a while. There's some new context and things to explore, so you can help us choose the film to do for you all there. All right, we're going to close out with our where you can find us. Shout out to the end crew that stays to the end of the show. We're on Twitter and Threads at Force Center Pod. We're on Instagram as well. Facebook page is Force Center Podcast. We are available on a lot of spots as a podcast. Just search. You'll find us. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, anything owned by Odyssey. Be careful. They're declaring bankruptcy as another digital giant false. Merch available at tpublic.com/user/Force Center and patreon.com/Force Center. As we said, is where you can support us. Follow me at Ken Napzok. Go to my website, kennapzok.com for more. Jen?
Oh, I like that. You can follow me on Instagram, YouTube at Jennifer Landa, TikTok at Jennifer Landa 1138.
There you go. Simple, direct. But Joseph, take us home.
Yeah, you can find me on all the social media at Joseph Scrimshaw is my handle everywhere. But in particular, you can also subscribe to my new weekly newsletter if you want to do that. You can find tags all over social media. Hopefully by then, I'll do that later this afternoon. But if you want to go directly, you can go to buttondown.email/finish your monsters. Finish Your Monsters is the name of the blog. That is it, Ken.
That is it. All right. So for the New Republic, and all those senators we're rooting for, we'll see you next time. This was ForceCenter.